Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And well done, Martin. That was a very eloquent and very well setting the scene. Unfortunately, I'm going to be dragging us back down to potholes again, although, recognizing that we do need to future-proof our highways. But actually, I really want to sort of talk about the problem that's here today and will be here in the next 5 or 10 years if we don't do something about it. And I really do hate talking about potholes because I want to talk about good proactive asset management, and it's good, Martin, that you really get that, and it's good to hear the politicians talking that language. I'm delighted to be here as president of the Chartered Institute of Highways and Transportation. We have 14,000 members across the UK and internationally. You're welcome to come and visit our stand at the conference here today. So I'm talking here in that role, but I'm also a director of WSP, so I'm still very active in the industry, particularly working in the local government sector. And I guess that's my background in the public sector. All my experience has been working on local roads. So, I do feel quite confident to talk about that particular issue. And I think we know enough about the problem. Martin's already very eloquently gone through some of the issues, the backlog. People have got different figures about the backlog, but we all know there is a backlog. In some respects, the numbers just become too overwhelming, and what we want to think about is actually what we actually need in terms of the condition of that network rather than this great big sum. And, there are a lot of issues around insurance claims, and I suppose what I recognised was that last winter was probably the worst I'd seen in terms of its impact on the condition of local roads in all my 35 years career in local government. So things are not getting any better, and there is a time now to think about the future. And I actually got the graph of doom here, Martin, so I brought it with me in my back pocket. And I'm bringing it here today because I think we've reached that tipping point now. So this graph of doom predicted that, as Martin said, the cost of adult social care and children's services would be all-consuming in terms of local authority revenue budget. And that predicted the tipping point, I think, around 2022-23. I think we're here and now with some local authorities. So we're hearing nearly every day about local authorities going bust. Northamptonshire, we talked about East Sussex. Martin, you seem to be surviving and doing a good job, but it's a real challenge. And I think, now is the time that we've really got to do something. I've had discussions with one or two of these authorities, and it's absolutely shocking that they're having to do the statutory minimum. And, highway maintenance is not just about capital. About 40% of the highway maintenance funding is revenue, and it's about the routine stuff that we need to do to make sure we protect the integrity of the asset. And if we're not doing some of that stuff, we're just going to compound the problem. If we're not keeping our drains clear, if we're not dealing with that day-to-day stuff on the network. And some authorities are going to stop doing that, and I'm not sure their residents have really woken up to that and what it's going to mean to them in terms of those things that they normally expect. And as Martin said, we are capital rich. And the budget was great for strategic roads, and I've got to be careful what I say at this event because there's a big focus on Highways England and the strategic road network. But there does seem a complete inequality between the funding that's going now for strategic roads and local roads. So strategic roads get 45 times the amount of money on maintenance that local roads get. And some local roads, the minor roads, will only be resurfaced once every 150 years. This is just not right. And as Martin said, it was great to get that 420 million. And by the way, you've got to spend it by April and, spend it through the winter. Is that really good use of public money? And actually, is it good use of public money to fill potholes? That cannot be right. The local authorities here today will want that money up front to do proactive, good asset management, not go around filling potholes all the time. It's just not the best way and best use of spending public money. So, I think we're sort of in the perfect storm, both from the financial perspective, from the condition, and as Martin says, and I think, what I'm going to focus on quite a bit is that spending review. Now is the opportunity to try and think about what we might do. And let's move away from talking about the problem, because we all agree about that. Let's start talking about the solutions. And that's where it gets quite interesting, because there is a parliamentary select committee who are going to be receiving evidence only in the next week or two. And I'm going to be talking there on behalf of a number of organisations. And what's interesting in this review, because I think we've been around this before in terms of funding, they're also talking about governance. And I think, in my view, that is an integral part of the problem, that there are too many highway authorities, so we dilute the resources across the country. We don't have the optimum delivery models. So I think part of our consideration is to say, is there a better way of managing our highway maintenance infrastructure in this country and moving away from the model we have? And we're already seeing some of that in terms of combined authorities and the subnational transport boards. So, how could the day-to-day management of highways fit in that changing environment of the structure of local government? So the Select Committee are looking at all the right things, in my view. The question will be is how much influence they might have, but the timing's quite good. So I was very pleased to pull together a submission from these organisations, and we focused on 3 key messages. One of it was about the trade-off, and we talked about the problem in the revenue side, and we don't really raise enough about the revenue, and it's not always recognised in government. The Department for Transport think they hold the ring on this. Well, actually, they only hold about 60% of the funding, and as we've already shown, the Ministry of Housing and Local Government fund about 40% of highway maintenance in this country. So, why do we need 2 government departments funding one problem? And could we look at that in a single budget that could be ring-fenced and money isn't siphoned off for these other services? And also, we talked about the statistics, the indicators, and some of them are very contradictory, and I don't think we have a good handle on this. And I think part of what I'm going to talk about, the review that's going to go forward, is to say, let's have a look at all the information and just see if we really can articulate this better, because it is quite contradictory. And then obviously looking at this long-term funding and the sustainability, and Martin's already talked about, the LGA's suggestion, and I think, that has very much got to be part of the solution. So I'm pleased to report today that CIHT, through myself, will be undertaking a review, and it's quite aptly called the Lugg Review. That wasn't my idea, by the way, but I'm quite pleased to put my name to it. And it's really nice to bump into Jesse Norman yesterday, and I said to him that we're doing this work, and we'd be really pleased to talk to you about it, because we want to make sure that we help you in doing your bit for local roads in the spending review. And I said it's going to be called the Lugg Review. And he said, "Oh, Lugg," he said, "I've got a River Lugg in my constituency." So you will remember Lugg in one way or another, even if it's just about a river rather than the review. But anyway, so we want to look at all these attributes that I've already shared with you in terms of the way forward. And I think particularly around these alternative models. So, other parts of the world do it differently. We need to learn from them and think about if some of those things are transferable. But at the end of the day, I think there's got to be some form of user pay. Now, if that's through fuel duty, that may be one avenue, and there may be others that we need to explore. And I think the other point about this review is that we all talk about roads quite a lot, but actually the highway infrastructure covers a lot more asset types. And I think there's a big worry about our structures at the moment in terms of their resilience. And we had the catastrophic collapse in Italy that sent all sorts of worries across Europe. So, they're a very integral part of this highway infrastructure. But there are other parts that are very important, and Martin talked about the wider use of highways from the user perspective in helping people move and accessibility. So it's not just all about the motorist, it's about the pedestrian, it's about the cyclist. They all use that network. And the more it deteriorates, the more difficult it is for them. And so we need to think about all of those things as part of this review. And I think particularly drainage, because I always think that's the forgotten bit of highway infrastructure, because it's sort of below ground level, people don't worry about it. But actually, in terms of highway maintenance and road condition, that's essential that it's well managed and well maintained to make sure that the integrity is protected. So, the scope of this review will look at the relevance. What are the barriers? We talked about some of the political. I think there needs to be statutory change as well. I think the Highways Act needs to be relooked at. Do we still need to maintain all these roads at public expense when they're hardly used by anybody but the local farmer? We have lots of rural roads like that. Let's sort of stand back and just think about this in a probably more transformable way, rather than just asking for more money and then not really addressing some of the key issues. And what are the models going to be, and those solutions? So this is quite a big task, but we're putting together a really good team to do this. And we'd be really keen to engage with all the organisations that are here today and hear your views, because I think what we want to do is make sure we're all on the same hymn sheet. The message is concerted and same to government. And I think what Martin said very much resonates around the things I'm saying to you today. So we're in this information gathering stage. We'll be sending out questionnaires to organisations and people, doing that engagement with key stakeholders, particularly the users of that network, those that have a commercial interest like the hauliers and the bus operators. And then we'll be starting to put this document together. And I think what I'd like to see is some scenarios where we might look at some quite radical solutions and some that might be at more the political end of the spectrum in terms of acceptability. But like it or not, you know, the model is broken and we need to do something different in this country for local roads. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to explain this, and you know, I look forward to your questions. Thank you.